Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audiovisual Services. And I got to tell you, I've been looking forward to today's conversation for a while. We have a great technical mind with us today on AVX Live, and I am sure that everyone is going to learn something new. Unless there is a surprise visit, my co-host Ryan Finch will not be joining us today. We're working with the production team for the Clio Awards, which is really the advertising industry's kind of top award for creativity and execution. And since they are live right this second, I'm going to guess that Ryan's not going to be joining us. But either way, I'm sure we'll have him back next week. Now, as you know, we've been hosting the program for about 3 months now. And so to help us continue our journey, please subscribe to the YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn channels so we can continue to bring you new content to help increase and improve your AV and technology experience, especially on a day-to-day basis. And so now let me tell you a little bit about today's guest, right? I told you, great technical mind. So I'm going to tell you about Ed Willock. Ed is an experienced audiovisual specialist who's based in the New York tri-state area. Ed's unusual in the fact that he can really cover a lot of positions and at a very high level. So A1, A2, monitor engineer or front of house engineer on the audio side, and then V1, V2, LED technician or engineer, projectionist, graphics, playback. He can even engineer all the cameras. And now what's really interesting is, of course, he's a Zoom and streaming specialist. And you'll hear more about AV Tech Talks and AV Educate really soon. But since 1996, Ed has produced, mixed, or performed, and the perform's the fun part, right? Like that's performing right there, at thousands of concerts and events. He's worked at venues throughout the East Coast, Southeast and Midwest US, and throughout all of Canada. In addition to his live event production background, he also has work and education in recording studio settings, including the design, purchase, and installation of all the recording equipment at the Nyack Center studio. He's skilled in video projection, live event switching, and holds a vast number of AV-related certificates. Through his experience as a senior producer, he's also really comfortable producing, managing, and interfacing with all of your clients and the talent. So please welcome today's guest, Ed Willock.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Ed. Did I do your bio and your intro justice, or?
Yeah. Wow. I was. It sounds like you're my biggest cheerleader right there. The picture too of me performing that you dug deep for that. So that was great. That was great.
Well, I mean, it's funny because that's one of the things is that I was thinking about. I'm like, oh, I wonder how Ed got into this type of field. And then when I saw the picture, I'm like, oh, I know how he got into this type of field.
Tale as old as time, right? Guy playing in bands ends up buying the gear for the recording at home and the PA system so they can play out. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got into this AV industry.
Well, that's funny. Now, since I know that you did some work at one of the local theaters, did you start on the theatrical side or on the AV side, or was it the music side? I mean,
it really was the music side. I got into doing some theater work much later. But yeah, no, it was definitely music. Like I said, as a kid, I was playing in bands, and I bought the microphones and all the stuff we needed to record ourselves. I mean, this is the mid-late 90s, and we were still recording to 4-track cassette tapes, So, an external CD burner in 1998 was like $500. Nobody had them. They weren't like, and now everyone's like, what's a CD burner? So, technology, I've seen a lot of technology change in a very short time. But yeah, music was the route that I got into it. I became a concert promoter, and that was, again, out of necessity for wanting my bands to play great shows and wanting all my friends to be able to perform. And, my mom, when I was a kid, had to rent out Legion halls for me to put on these concerts. And And I actually bought a PA system because I was putting on these little concerts. I started in an old church in Piermont that the Girl Scouts sponsored. So we'd have these like punk bands playing on stage, and then in the back, the Girl Scouts were selling their cookies. It was a really funny situation. But I got kind of tired of paying the guy to bring a PA system and set it up. So I ended up buying a bunch of his gear from him. So then I had some gear, and then other people asked me, hey, can you do sound for hire? So I quickly learned more and more, got more gear. A couple of years go by, and I'm like, wow, I have this giant sound system, and I'm booked every weekend. So that's where it all started.
Wow.
You know, in music, you know, I did a little bit of touring here and there, and really, you know, concert promoting got me really deep into events and the other side of it. So I've kind of, as you mentioned in my bio, you know, worked on multiple points of event production, from being the producer to also being a vendor, you know, to being the talent, which helps me stay well-rounded and kind of understand the multiple perspectives, helps me work better with clients and their clients and whatnot. And then I got into video much later, you know, really when I decided to focus more on doing corporate AV. You know, once my rock and roll dreams went to die, and I jumped into the corporate world, I you know, really
let's relive
upped my
it
video
one more
game.
time. Let's relive it one more time.
And that's a more modern picture. I'm glad you didn't find even older pictures. But yeah, that was probably somewhere in the early 2010s, you know, 2012, 2013-ish. But yeah, that's
good stuff, though.
So funny.
Now, do you bass, guitar, both? What's your
both?
preference?
Yeah. I fancy myself a better bass player. That's but in that picture, I'm playing guitar, and I've done both. I don't sing anymore because, you know, too many hurt eardrums from too many audience members. But you know,
totally understand. That's pretty cool, though. And then you got into the AV side, I guess, which is a little more kind of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And
Right.
I mean, so you've worked with a lot of corporate types of groups and that's like conference type of people, or?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, it started out obviously in concerts, which, you know, if you're doing concert and recording studios, you know, my degree, I have a degree from SUNY Purchase in studio production and a second degree in arts management. Those are what my bachelors are in. And yeah, I had done a lot of that work, and then moved, like I said, learned video, and then got into doing more corporate work. So the corporate AV stuff, I worked with tons of, well, you know, pre-pandemic, I was doing a ton of pharmaceutical companies, investment firms doing their multi-day, multi-track conferences, you know, large-scale town hall meetings, all sorts of things like that, where we're setting up projectors or LED walls and, you know, large-scale sound systems. We're providing cameras and doing IMAG, and then also feeding streams. So I did pre-pandemic, I did have a lot of experience working alongside streaming vendors, and also sometimes doing the streaming ourselves, which prepared me for kind of the fallout that we all experienced about a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, that is, you know, I think we kind of traveled a similar path in that, yes, we were streaming. It was usually a very similar type of stream, you know, in a repetitive nature, that we point the camera at whatever's going on in the conference room or the ballroom or wherever. And usually that's what they saw on the other side, you know?
Yep, exactly.
It's a very different experience at this point.
Right.
Because of the importance of the online audience and you know, that demand now that it really does look like TV. Like, it's got to be broadcast at this point. So
exactly.
Interesting, right?
When you don't have an audience to wow, then you've got to wow the person sitting at their computer watching at home. So it's a very, very different, it's like the complete opposite of how we were doing it. And it, you know, that's probably going to be a little bit of the trend when we get into more virtual hybrid events, where we do start having an in-person audience. You know, those, while there's restrictions, those audiences are going to be smaller, and our online audiences are going to be actually the bigger audience. And I think we're going to have to, you know, if anyone wants to be successful, I think there's going to be some growing pains, and it's going to take a little time to figure out how to strike the right balance. But I think moving forward, we're going to be producing our events more with the streaming audience more in mind. And it won't be just that single camera in the back of the room, or two cameras side by side, one locked off wide and one tight, you know.
Yeah, I tend to think that you're right. It's funny, Ed. I'm noticing that you have some fans, and they're coming in with comments. One says that you rock, the other says he never learned to play a musical instrument. I mean, I don't know. They're jealous, I guess.
Hey,
That's what it is.
hey, it's
I
I
didn't,
mean,
I
like I
didn't know
said,
you brought your entourage. I wasn't expecting that.
oh well, anywhere I go, I make sure I let people know where I am. So
Well, it's funny because we've been talking for years at this point. You referred to us from another kind of long-term friend of corporate AV, even though I don't think we've actually worked on a project together, which is kind of unique and unusual. But
yeah,
hopefully that changes soon. I think there's a lot of things happening. I think there's a lot of ways we can connect. But I
absolutely.
certainly noticed a lot of what you've been doing online,
Mhm.
and really a great educational program that kind of caters to the AV world. And I know it streams on Monday. I can't remember if it's at 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock, but I know you're going to tell me. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I host a program on Monday nights called AV Tech Talks, presented by AV Educate, and we stream every Monday night at 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So each week we get together on Zoom, and then we stream that out to YouTube and Facebook. And what we do is we bring in a guest speaker to join our panel. We have a kind of a dedicated group of people who volunteer their time to share their knowledge. And these guest speakers will talk about either some software, some hardware, or something, an AV concept. We just spent the last month talking about audio, for example, where I brought in a whole bunch of audio experts and really heavy hitters in the industry to go over like the fundamentals of audio for 4 consecutive weeks. And yeah, it's just this great place where people can join the conversation. Because as I said, we're on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube, and we take live comments and questions throughout the show.
Mm-hmm.
So we do the live Q&A, and really the audience kind of steers what direction we want to go. We kind of go into it thinking like, okay, we ask the presenters, have about 45 minutes of material prepared, but we're going to interrupt you a lot, and the audience is going to take you on different paths you didn't expect. So don't get too bent out of shape if we don't cover everything you had planned, because we really want the audience to get out of it what they need. And it's really a tool for fellow AV technicians to come and learn the things that we, when I curate the shows, I kind of look at the things that are important right now. So we've covered a lot of streaming topics. We've covered a lot of video topics. Like I said, we just did real heavy audio fundamentals for the video person who maybe finds themselves having to do audio now in this streaming world. And with that, Omar Colom is the one who started AV Educate. And,
Okay.
the whole mission is to give, to take stagehands to technicians and technicians to engineers or operators. So we're always working on that progression. We don't just cater to those upper echelon guys who already know the high end gear.
Right.
We try to keep things fundamental and base level. We try to always kind of go in for the lowest common denominator, so that nobody feels left behind. And then the audience, man, they'll tell us if we're going too slow by asking these heavy questions. So it's a really good balance. But the whole thing is about giving back. I've been pretty successful in the AV industry. I feel like I've been lucky, and I've been able to work on great projects. Even through the pandemic, I've been able to maintain a pretty steady work schedule. And there's a lot of AV techs who haven't. So if we can arm them with the skills they need to come back to the industry once we all start getting back in person, or pivot to this virtual world, that's kind of where we were at. And I spend so much of my time just helping people on forums online and through AV Educate and AV Tech Talks, just trying to get people up to speed in any way that I can help them. There's not much I can do other than share some knowledge and some information. I don't have tons of work to give to other people. But if I can teach them a skill that lands them another job, or make networking connections, I'm always putting people in touch with other people who, could use their services. I try to do all that wherever I can. But it's a fun trip. I'll tell you that.
I think the program has really been great, and you got. I mean, I've watched a number of them. It looks like you have like 2,500 different people on your Facebook channel alone. So obviously, there's a need.
Yeah.
And you're reaching people when they're a little bit down. I mean, we know what our industry's gone through, and I talk about there's like 12 million people unemployed,
Right.
so it's a huge number
Yeah.
because of the whole event and hospitality fields. But you're
Well,
reaching them at the right time.
yeah.
And
Not
really
not to bring the conversation down for a minute, but to be honest, the way AV Tech Talks got started very early in the pandemic was really just Zoom meetings of a bunch of AV guys getting together, guys and girls coming together and talking and doing like a weekly check-in. Where Omar's from down in Florida, there was
Omar's checking in right now, so he's obviously watching you.
So you better
do
great.
Well. You better do
hey,
well.
Omar. So I mean, where Omar's from down in Florida, there was a couple of local technicians that were well known in their circles. That the pressure of losing all their work, sadly they'd committed suicide, and a bunch of these guys from Florida came together and said, we should just do this check-in. Omar, there was another guy, Scott. They put this thing together, and we just started checking in once a week, talking. We weren't even talking tech. It was just AV guys getting together and chatting. But being AV tech people, the conversations always got to tech stuff. So we split off and did AV Tech Talks as a place where we could all just geek out about gear, and then we maintained the weekly chat check-in kind of thing for a while. And then AV Tech Talks, we started streaming it on Facebook and YouTube, and it just kind of blew up from there. But it really came out of that, need and those guys who and gals in AV who just, needed people to talk to, because all of a sudden everything was dropped out from under us. So it was
it was just such a big surprise for everyone that
right.
There's no way to see that come.
That need, though, that's exactly where our hearts were when we came up with this concept, And there were a lot of, early in the pandemic, there was a time before I started getting back to regular work, I was spending like 30 hours a week watching webinars because there was just so much great content. Barco was doing webinars, Disguise was doing webinars. The guys over at Practical Show Tech, I was watching that all the time with Pete Erskine and Matt Carr. Great stuff was out there because I know I needed to keep my skills leveled up. So, I was on simulators all the time, playing with virtual gear just to stay on top of my game. And when me and Omar kind of met and talked, we decided, this is something that other people might need. And if we can facilitate getting them to level up their skills, we would want to do it. So, yeah, that's kind of where that all came from. So, I wasn't gonna bring us down, but once you mentioned, how the industry was hurt, people should know that that's where this all came from, and it comes from a place of wanting to help our fellow AV techs. We really believe, I firmly believe that, the days of not helping each other because you're worried someone's going to take your job, or you don't want to, share information so that you have one up, you have some special skill. Those days are way over. That's old thinking. I still know quite a few AV guys who have that thinking, and I think it's toxic. And I think right now, if you can help people learn something, like, that's where we should be at, and that's kind of where I've taken my stand. I've drawn my line in the sand, and that's where I am, because the rising tide lifts all boats. So yep. I think that's how we should operate, and I think we're all stronger together. I think if we all come back with a ton more skills and a ton more knowledge, that's only going to help rates go up for all us freelancers, and our clients are just going to get better shows, because we're all going to be on top of our game, and ultimately that's what it is, right? We want to put on the best shows that we can. So I think this pandemic, if nothing else positive has come from it, has been kind of that rally around community and these conversations like we're having now, and like what we do on Monday nights. And Omar has a podcast on Wednesday nights where he talks about the soft skills, the business side. Joe, I gotta get you in touch with Omar and get you on that show, because talking to a business owner in the AV industry, what do you look for when you look for freelancers, and how do you manage? How did you guys manage in the downturn of this? Would be a great topic. So, but those soft skills are like our Wednesday night program, and Mondays are our hard technical skills. So it's just great great all around for the whole community. Everyone's leveling up, and that's the one positive thing we can take out of it. Then I'm glad I was able to be a part of it.
Well, I think you guys have done great, and that sense of, you can feel the sense of camaraderie and everybody working together and getting better, and so I think it started from it sounds like it started from a place where you're just trying to keep people together, and touch on that personal and emotional side, but now you've brought it to another level, and that leveling up, I think, is exactly what we all need to do to move forward, because the reality is this has changed everything.
Absolutely.
It's not just, we're not all just going back and doing the same thing, in a few months, or maybe they might already be ready to go down there in Florida with Omar and everybody, but we're not there yet. So
yeah,
it's going to take us a little bit in the New York area. I certainly saw a couple of pieces on there, because I hadn't really been familiar with like the live view and the solo and all that beforehand. Yep. And I thought that was really interesting. And I'm not as technical as you guys, so I don't have that kind of depth of knowledge. Right. But I know that will help me solve problems now.
Oh yeah. And
that's the bottom line.
That was an early episode before we had it all kind of figured out and dialed in. But yeah, no, that was one of the things, exactly those topics. LiveView is, a streaming device that lets you connect to completely, SIM cards. You can do, 4G streaming with it, or you can connect it to a hardline internet and have failover. And that's like a perfect example of what people needed at that time. That was probably like last August that we did that episode, and people were trying to figure out how do I stream a funeral? How do I stream, an outdoor ceremony of some sort where I don't have
using that MiFi? Like, do I really have to use that?
Right. No, exactly. So, and that's, those choices of what to curate on that is exactly what shaped how we picked what we did. Because people who never heard of a live view solo, now they have a $1,000 solution for solving a client's problems. And, those are the kinds of things we thought were important, like pick on the things that were maybe not so well known, but would be super useful. So I'm glad you mentioned that and that you picked up on that particular episode. That was great.
Well, it happened to be, it's one of those things you go, that would have taken me 2 months to research and figure out. But here's a whole bunch of people, peers that have already done that work. And now here's the expert. I remember the guy who came on. I'm like, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Michael Bernstein.
That's what I want to see.
Exactly. Yeah. Michael Bernstein's the guy to talk to about that stuff, and he nailed that. Raised the bar for a lot of our presentations after that. So
yeah, he was real good. But I guess only because I'm kind of involved in on our side, that planning and that pre-production, and I know how time consuming it can be. So how do you go about curating the show and deciding what to bring on?
So in the beginning, me and Omar would just kind of brainstorm and say, what stuff are our clients asking us for? What tools are we using right now that are solving the problems of moving into this virtual space? Both of us had some experience in that, so we just kind of looked at that and then found the right people to present that. Sometimes it's me and Omar. I mean, Omar did the first episode. He talked about OBS and StreamYard and Restream, so that was the first episode that we actually streamed onto Facebook Live. And I've done a handful. Chris, one of our other co-hosts, he did an episode on IT. That's where his focus is. So cool. We just kind of picked those things that we thought people wanted, and then once we had a handful of these shows under our belt and we had some audience, we started asking them, hey, what are some stuff you guys want? Which that's like pulling teeth. So anybody who hosts a show understands when you ask your audience, what do they want to know about? Everyone gets very silent. But we could kind of, because of the interactive nature of the show and the Q&A, I could take from an episode, if someone asks like this higher level question about something that maybe is an offshoot of what we were talking about tonight, I would find, okay, what do I need to focus on within that question that gives me a show idea for a following week. And but our audience has been great. We have a Discord channel, so I'm always asking people, hey, what do you guys want to know about? Mm-hmm. And I have a running list of things we came up with. And then now we also get approached by various developers and manufacturers like about coming on the show, which
absolutely.
We're often I'm very cautious about what developers we bring on. And I usually don't bring on anybody whose products I don't actually use or that I'm not interested in using. Mainly because we don't want it to become an infomercial, and we're very clear with all of our presenters that this isn't you marketing to them. This should be an informational session, and then our audience is going to naturally want to know more about your product. So we do give that space that people can plug the things that they have, but we don't want it to be 2 hours of learning about the Ronco rotisserie. That's not what we're doing.
You don't have that guy Billy. I can't think of his last name with the blue shirt.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He was on every commercial. No,
exactly.
I know what you mean, because then that takes away from the authenticity. It takes away from really what you're trying to do,
right?
Which is bring a community together to learn something.
Right.
And if you're talking about progressing and leveling up for the future, I think that's exactly it.
Yep.
And I've seen our role change from just AV guys to now there's a lot of support, and there's a lot of, hey, how are we going to do this? And so that's where getting these ideas and working with your community and your other peers is really helpful, because you're just continuously trying to jam something into something that was not designed to do that,
Yep.
So
exactly.
There's always a path, and you're trying to figure it out every day, it seems like.
Yeah, it's like we're always rounding that square hole to fit the peg, right? That's kind of what we're doing with this stuff. That's one of the other things I try to do too, is pick more stuff that's kind of obscure or not as well known. Like even pre-pandemic, Omar had done a live stream on Playback Pro, which is industry standard playback software. So on the show, we haven't done a Playback Pro AV Tech Talks, but we've done Malumen, and we've done
I saw a couple. One. I can't remember what the name it was. I hadn't heard of it before.
Right, and we've done some of these things that maybe people haven't heard of but should check out. So that's always the thing. I'm trying to look for new things. We've had a lot of great episodes with Liminal, who developed Zoom OSC, which is a hugely useful tool if you're doing Zoom management meetings, especially if you're taking them out of Zoom and then repackaging with something like vMix and broadcasting it out. And we as we were building these episodes, they were making a lot of partnerships and integrations with things like Isadora and Universe Show Control. So as they were developing this product and it was growing, because our community was using it and we were constantly talking with them, I was able to then bring in Isadora and Universe Show Control to expose the audience, so they have other tools to work with. The timing of it worked out great, and then our community again just leveled up, because now they had these new tools that they never would have heard of, because both Isadora and Universe Control are European companies, European developers. So they're not hugely popular here in the States, but now all of a sudden they are, and they're getting used for AV, where in the past Isadora was mostly a theater program like QLab or something, which we've done stuff on QLab as well. Not a huge AV use, huge in my theater work. QLab is everywhere, and the tools are they translate and they're useful. So, just bringing that knowledge, that's kind of what we aim for, is those obscure things sometimes is what I look for, and what would be good for the average AV technician to know that maybe isn't on their radar yet. So.
Well, that's great, because it's a time of change, and so being open to it, not only to the different products from Europe or wherever that maybe you just don't know it as well,
right.
Being open to change, this is that time,
Yep.
Now on the virtual side,
yep.
Right? I know you're seeing a lot of different programs, platforms. I mean, what are you seeing mostly? You mentioned vMix, you mentioned Zoom. I mean, are those the two you're seeing all the time, or are there other things?
I mean, there's a few things. Mac users, Mimo Live is another popular vision mixing software like vMix. I'm seeing a lot of vMix, and then a lot of OBS also still. Mm-hmm. OBS being free, it's great for low budget clients. And I'll tell you, there's certain things having OBS involved with make things a lot easier. A lot of the times I do pre-records, I'll do the window captures in OBS, just because it's super fast and easy for me to get going with. I also, Joe, we were kind of talking in the pre-show here about sometimes putting OBS between your vMix, and if you're broadcasting out to Zoom, for example, there was someone on a user group who had a power issue and lost their their encode coming into Zoom, and then Zoom switched cameras on them, and the audience saw the technician in a not so favorable state of unhappiness. And I mentioned that putting OBS in between there, so that OBS is actually the webcam living on the laptop you're streaming from or feeding Zoom from. The image would have just went black when you lost power to your other machine, instead of going to the other camera. So there's and then you have a backup. You can throw a technical difficulty slide, and it's right there pretty seamlessly. So yeah, there's places for OBS. vMix though is definitely the program that most people are using for these really in-depth broadcast type events. And then there's vMix Call for bringing in remote callers. There's other software like Live to Air. There's OBS Ninja. I still use Zoom. I really took to Zoom early in the pandemic, and I kind of became a Zoom expert. I hate to use that term, but maybe Zoom guru. I don't know. I'm the admin on a couple Zoom user groups.
Guru is a higher level than an expert.
Okay. Yeah, it's a level of enlightenment, I think. So yeah, I think that would work. I think somebody actually.
Do you remember this guy? This was before Zoom. You remember that?
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Somebody actually called me a Zoom tech wizard, and I kind of liked that. That was, that implies some magic. So I'll take any of those.
It is a little bit of magic. I don't think there's any question about that.
No. But I sometimes host the Zoom Test Kitchen on Facebook, which is a group where we have weekly meetings and we test things on Zoom. I think Will from your team, Will Austin's joined us a handful of times. And I do a lot of Zoom management. I have right now I'm juggling a handful of Zoom only conferences where everything is going to be produced into Zoom. We do a lot of Zoom repackages as well, where we take one Zoom meeting, bring in the remote callers, either as, from separate computers or whatever, as NDI feeds, and then send them over to vMix to then get spit out to another Zoom webinar. And the beauty of Zoom is everybody knows it. Your clients understand it, so there's like less learning curve. The audience understands it, and you go there, and there's only really one thing you can do. You can watch a webinar, and it just makes it kind of easy. It's not the right tool for everything. Sometimes you still need to go out to a CDN, or sometimes you're doing both. But NDI is another tool though that is everywhere for networking your video and audio. These are the things that most people are using, and these are the things when I'm consulting with clients that we're talking about, to make the technology work to get the best product. I don't think of anything as a one size fits all solution, and sometimes mixing and matching these products are what you really need to get the best deliverable. But
I know we were talking about that before too. That it seems like we're doing that all the time, where you're mixing and matching, because the reality is they're not necessarily designed to do what we're trying to do. And we find ourselves doing a lot of branding in one program, but sending it another place so that the audience has a better experience.
Right.
And experience doesn't just mean highest resolution.
Right.
And I know as technical, people, a lot of our technicians, our audience, they tend to get caught up in resolutions sometimes. But the reality is, if I have a 75-year-old person that is a critical part of that team watching it and they can't access it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's a problem. That's what I know. It's going to be a problem. And we had kind of the same thoughts on the Zoom side. Other things are, I guess, better or more designed for, maybe bringing people in. We just found that the presenters understood it better.
Right.
And we weren't hitting firewall problems, and we weren't, because that's the one thing. There's definitely challenges with corporate firewalls and all these browser-based programs.
Yep. And all the
we've
time,
unfortunately seen that, and had that issue and had to live through it. So
right. And all the time that we spend either coaching, a presenter who maybe isn't very tech savvy in a different platform or a different, contribution ingest system, or the time we spend with the IT department of a company trying to get through their firewall, time equals money. So all of that, sometimes just going for the Zoom route because, again, that familiarity, it's like putting on your favorite jacket. You just know it and you understand it, you feel safe with it, and it works. And it does work most of the time. Zoom does a great job of balancing, resolution to bandwidth and all that. It does help. I mean, I have access to a 1080p account with Webinar that's 1080p for attendees. So for me, that's one of those things where, of course, I'm going to use this tool because I know what the consistency of it is. I know what I'm going to get. Versus using something that maybe is WebRTC like vMix Call or OBS Ninja. So there's certain reasons why I lean towards the Zoom. Like I said, I really dove into Zoom from the beginning just because I saw that there was going to be a lot of value to it. But I also saw that with the popularity of it, because it got very popular very quick. Immediately. That there was also going to be this idea that, it's just a Zoom meeting. I do Zoom meetings every day. My kid does Zoom meetings for school. This is like, it's just Zoom, which, sure, for your everyday meeting or keeping up with friends or these lessons, yeah, that might be true until you go to try to do a large scale webinar for 1,000 plus people, and you're not sure what's going to happen when you spotlight somebody or you try to spotlight two people. And that's where a lot of my Zoom management work comes in. I advise people, and then I actually take on those technical roles where I'm on the back end producing these things because I know the results they're going to get. Things about recording, people are constantly upset because they don't know what the recording options are in Zoom, and there's different looks and things. So having someone like me on your team who has already done all that work, again, time is money. Now you don't have to spend those couple hours reading release notes and support documents and testing. I'm constantly doing testing in order to do that. Plus, I have accounts, like I said, that are high resolution. So a lot of my clients end up just hiring me to bump meetings, to increase the resolution or maximize the resolution on their meetings. Or advise them on how they can maximize, if it's just a pure consulting client, just how to maximize the resolution, which I know we talked about, and it still is important. I can tell you the biggest turning point for AV Tech Talks in the quality of the demos we got was when we did go to a 1080p webinar, because now for the presenters who wanted to come in with vMix to share their screen, but they're showing text. We had one guy who did a bunch of a Raspberry Pi. He was building a companion instance on Raspberry Pi. So we were seeing a lot of, command line code. And on that 360p, you couldn't make it out because he was bringing in vMix. Now I don't have to worry about that because everything is at 1080. So having that high resolution really can make a difference. If you have a lot of slides with a lot of text and you don't want to do screen sharing, especially, these repackages where you're doing a zoom into a Zoom through a vision mixer, that having that high resolution on the webinar side, on the endpoint, and on the vMix side allows you to see the text and get your message across. Because if nobody can read it, then think about all those busy slides we've seen in person where you can't read any of it and it's on a giant LED wall or a giant projection screen. Now put it on someone's phone or on someone's screen that's just, they've got it minimized because they're working on their email and everything else. It really makes a difference. So while, that resolution piece can be important, and figuring out how to maximize those so that your message, you just don't want it to get in the way of being able to get your message across. So, that's kind of what I see, sure. and why I use Zoom, because I can reliably get those results. It's kind of a hit or miss with some other platforms. Some other platforms do a great job with it. Some people really like Teams because of the NDI, the native NDI aspect of it. Whereas with Zoom, I have to do multiple machines and do multiple captures. So there's many ways to skin the cat, and I just happen to land on this one and happen to like it. But I know about all of these other ones and I know how to use them. And I think that's the other thing too, is just being well-rounded, because you're going to get clients who only want to use Teams, or they've invested in Teams or something. And
absolutely,
that they're going to dictate what you get to use to make it happen. So
yeah, no, and I think you're smart to learn all of the options, because that's what's going to come up. I mean, Teams is a dominant player in corporate America. It's built into their infrastructure. It works perfectly when, the IT team has got that lined up. The hard part is when the outsider comes in, but internally that thing works phenomenal.
Yep.
But that's our job, right? As their consultants, as their advisors, that's our job, is to learn what the options are and present the right solution for the right project. And so I think you're very smart to be staying on that side and helping others to learn that with AV Educate and Tech Talks. So now that the in-person events are coming back, I mean, are you ready to go back to in-person, or you staying all virtual? Like, what are you going to do?
Well, so I've been lucky enough that I've done a handful of in-person events over the last couple months, and some of them have been we're doing records to go live, or we're doing things that are for virtual, but they're on site with maybe just a small group of the from the organization as the audience. I did just do a job with an LED wall where we were showing the F1 race that happened last weekend to about an audience of 70 people. That was out in Connecticut. So yeah, I'm ready to go back out into the world. I got fully vaccinated, so I think that's an important step for any of our technicians. I think it's a great idea, and you should make sure you let the people you work for know that you're vaccinated, because
absolutely,
but it puts people at ease, and when they can say to the end client, oh, everyone on my team's been fully vaccinated, that might be the difference sometimes between who gets that contract. If you have a team that's fully vaccinated versus a team that isn't, sometimes just from a liability perspective, that client will go with the fully vaccinated team. So definitely something to consider. But yeah, no, I'm ready for it. I've got some theater stuff coming up. I'm helping out with a synagogue next month, doing some streaming from within the synagogue, where they're going to have a live audience plus the virtual audience. So everything I'm doing so far has a hybrid component, and I think that's where we're going to be moving forward. I don't think we're going to have too many events that are completely in person without that streaming aspect. I mean, maybe small things like ribbon cutting ceremonies or something where we set up a couple PA on a stick things. But for the most part, I think anything that people are bringing together in a ballroom, certainly in a hotel, they're going to have some sort of streaming aspect to it. So, which brings other challenges, because now you're dealing with, before we didn't need tons of internet, from that hotel, but now we're going to have to make sure we have reliable internet and maybe a secondary internet line. So it's going to bring new challenges, but I'm ready for it. I mean, that's what I think most of us in the AV world, actually are excited about, is getting back out there. I did realize putting up that video wall the other day, though, that LED wall, that I need to start doing a little bit of working out. I was getting a little winded once we were getting up on that 12-foot ladder. So
yeah, it's not the old days, Ed.
Nope.
Not the old days. No, I think you're right about the hybrid and the fact that there are a number of challenges. And so it's good to be bringing that up with, all of our technical peers around the country and around the world, really, because you're going to be having people come in from around the world, because it's not just going to be the audience going out. It's going to be the presenters coming in. I think that'll be the first thing that we see is those presenters.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it opens a door. If I was running an executive meeting, a conference, anything, it opens the door to a whole nother group of presenters that didn't exist before for them.
Yeah.
They might have had to spend $75,000 to bring in that inspirational speaker, but now they throw them $5,000. They show up for 20 minutes. It's a win-win for both of them, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You don't have to put them up in the hotel. You don't have to fly them if they're coming from, out of the area. And now for the presenters too, instead of being tied to a single appearance,
Absolutely.
in one city. Now they could do 10, well, not 10, but they could do a couple appearances in a day. And I think
It's
it's going to
interesting.
be, what's that?
It's really interesting, the
Oh yeah, absolutely.
dynamics that are at play.
I think that I think bringing in remote presenters to in-person events is going to be a huge thing moving forward, and it's going to be a challenge that we have to think about. Like I said, making sure you have that reliable internet. If you're bringing in someone from Europe who's a big presenter, or some famous athlete from across the country, you don't want to have the hotel internet put the whole thing to a halt. So it's definitely just going to be a different ball game, and we're going to have to really think about things and have backups and understand what the limitations are and manage expectations. I mean, that's how much of our job is that, managing the expectations of the clients, and even of the presenters. Like, hey, if you decide to come in on your phone, we may not have great service. So if you want to look good on this presentation, let's get in front of a laptop or a computer with a hard line internet. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be a little bit of, like I said, growing pains in the beginning, but we'll all figure it out. We've been doing this for a while, and just bringing it to a larger audience in person. I think I'm up for the challenge and looking forward to it. So, and I hope that I hope you're seeing too that more stuff is coming in for these in person and on site events. I think that's the feeling I'm getting from all of the people I work for and work with and all my clients is, it's happening faster than I actually anticipated. I didn't think I would be seeing any of that until the fall of this year. So it's definitely looking positive for everybody. I think that we're going to get back to these in-person things, and everyone should just start dusting off their skills, make sure they're keeping up. And if you haven't touched a switcher in a while, go find the simulator and practice with it. And if you haven't touched an audio console, see if there's an editor that you can play with to remember where everything is. And call the shops you work for. Joe, I'm sure if any of your freelancers called you and said, "Hey, I'd love to come in and play with, X, Y, or Z equipment. Do you got a day that's free?" I'm sure you wouldn't say no. You'd be, if anything, that makes them more valuable, because now you know that A, your gear has gotten a little exercise, and B, that your tech is remembering and refreshed with your particular gear and how it's packed and all that stuff.
Absolutely. We've offered that for years and years. And, that's part of why we created our Pirate University training program. And it's fun. We had someone in just 2 weeks ago. He said, I haven't done anything in a while. Can I, we said, just come on in, you're fine. Come on in, work out, whatever you got to work out. We just got in this new production bot system, this week. And, we're looking forward to it because we're looking at that hybrid scenario. Yep. So I guess my last part for you is, I think you should put on, whether it's Tech Talks or AV Educate. Omar, I know you're listening. So, but I think you guys got to do something on the hybrid experience, especially for all those vMix guys who have been doing this for home. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to try to put that vMix on screen. They're going to need some class, I think, on that part, so we can get around the delays and the frame, latencies and losses.
Right. Yeah.
It's a different animal. So
yeah. I mean, I've been saying, I kind of jokingly, talk about there's a lot of vMix operators who maybe didn't come from AV originally, and they kind of got into vMix during the pandemic. And it may be advantageous to think, oh yeah, I can go do, your in-person event, no problem. But the first time you get asked to put iMag on an LED wall, you're going to find out real quick what latency is like, going from camera to capture card to processing through vMix out through your video card, and then dealing with LED wall processing. So I think that there's a lot of people who should definitely test those things out, and that's a great idea. Now with hybrid coming back, like I said, I was curating basically so that we were hitting the things that were important at the time. Absolutely. And hybrid didn't look like a thing, but no, you're absolutely right. This is the time to start thinking about those. So I'm gonna put that together for sure.
It looks like Henry's on board. I see that Omar and Henry are. I think we're reaching them right now. Absolutely. But yeah, that latency and all those different things. It gives you so much to talk about. we're running into all these processes everywhere now. But
Yep.
but look, I don't want to get into that. That's for you guys on Mondays and Wednesdays. So I'm going to let that be.
Yeah.
But listen, Ed, we got a production schedule. We're like 1:49. So we're a few minutes over schedule right now. I think we're going to have to wrap up, my friend.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. Thank you, Joe, again, for having me on. It was a pleasure. I was glad when you asked me to do this. And hopefully we can, our schedules can align, that we can get some work together pretty soon. It's just every time something comes up that it works out, it just, I'm busy or something falls through. And, hopefully going into these hybrid events, hopefully we can get some stuff together.
I am sure that the Zoom and vMix stars will align shortly. But listen, thank you again, Ed. And we look forward, everybody. Make sure you check these guys out on Monday nights and then on Wednesdays. But thank you again, Ed. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everybody.
So I told you were going to learn some things today. I mean, listen, you got, if anybody wants to hire Ed, get in touch with Ed. His LinkedIn profile is right there. If you want to really dig into some details on the technical side, on Mondays, you're going to see AV Educate. It's live all on every platform. I've seen it in 3 different places, and then certainly they have a Wednesday as well. So Mondays and Wednesdays, check it out. AV Tech Talks, AV Educate. These guys have been great, and you will learn something. There's a lot to learn right now. And so I see that Ed's entourage is chiming in again. I mean, he's very famous. This guy's world famous. So, we appreciate it. Thank you, Omar, for being a part and for helping to educate everybody. Our community needs it. And you guys have really done a great service for everyone. And look, even he's still hanging around, this guy. I mean, I thought I booted him out of here, but look, he's still there. He's commenting in. So please get in touch with everybody. These guys have been great as far as keeping their keeping the community together. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to come at this together, and we have to succeed together. So I'm going to wrap everything up. Listen, you guys know that we're here Wednesdays at 1:00. I bet you that guy, Ryan Finch, will probably come back. I know everybody wants to see the new Wonderkin. So he just won an award for being, one of the top under 30 people in the local area. So next time, reach out to him, congratulate him, tell him that, you missed him on today's show. But, we brought in the big guns. I mean, I got in the Zoom guru or wizard. I don't know what he is, but he's one of those guys. Either way, check us out check Corporate AV out on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And I think that's all I got for everybody today. So listen, we're going to roll. Everybody have a great day. Do well.